and welcome to this week's episode of Off the Fence. This is, of course, your go-to digital jumps programme, giving you the rundown week in, week out from now until the spring festivals. And we are working in association with BoyleSports, which is absolutely brilliant news. Plenty of offers coming your way, so do stay tuned for that. And before I introduce the boys, as always, please hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. That way you won't miss a single episode of Off the Fence, and it is absolutely essential viewing. Thank you as always for watching. So here we go, season 3, episode 3, I think we're on now, episode 4 maybe even. And as always, I'm joined by Geraghty and Tony Keenan. Quick intros because we've got so much good racing to cover from the weekend just gone. Barry, how are you? Straight off the back of Fairy House.
Yeah, brilliant day's racing, so lots to discuss, Vanessa.
Terrific. And Tony, did you go to Fairy House today?
No, I was tossing whether to go to Navan last week or Fairy House today, so I went to Navan, and looking at Barry on TV today, I was quite happy with my choice. He looked like he needed the gloves he had on and maybe a few other layers. It looked, the racing was absolutely brilliant, but I think the weather was pretty grim.
Jesus, Barry, did the gloves go on? Because I remember seeing you at Leopardstown once and everybody else on that show had gloves on, but you did not. And I thought, he's a hardy man, that Barry Geraghty. Did they go on today?
Yeah, I must be getting soft, Vanessa. Hanging around with you other media journalists type too much.
Too long retired, that's the problem here. She's going into whatever year it is now of retirement and just gone soft. Let's crack straight on with our What Happened Where section, because as I've said, it was a terrific weekend of racing and we've got loads of the good performances to dissect and some of the surprises too. And we're going to start with one of those because, of course, in the Hatton's Grace, Honeysuckle loses her unbeaten record, finishes third in the race that she's won so often before, beaten by Tiapu as the winner and, of course, Classical Dream in second. Barry, we're going to kick off with you here. What did you make of it, and how come she got beat?
Yeah, well, obviously, and Farius was jammed, but everyone was there to see Honeysuckle and presumed she was going to win. Now, she did face her stiffest challenge in the race with Classical Dream, and he was stepping back to 2.5 mile when being questionable whether he actually got the 3 mile trip so well in Cheltenham. So she did have a tough task on her hand there, but we all expect her to come through. But it turned out to be a brilliant race. And then Tiapu, who was the horse who promised last season in the Red Mills as a 5-year-old, but then disappeared in both the Champion Hurdle and Punchestown afterwards. But the 3 of those turned in and they squared up over the last, and the mare came out worse. Now, she was only beaten 3 lengths, and Tiapu put in a brilliant performance to beat Classical Dream. Would you write Honeysuckle off on that? I don't think so. I think if the 3 of those lined up in the Champion Hurdle next March, I'd have my money on Honeysuckle to beat Tiapu and Classical Dream. I'd imagine Classical Dream will go back to stairs route maybe, and Tiapu possibly a Champion Hurdle horse, but I would imagine that he needs it soft.
Well, Tiapu is currently a 50-1 shot for the Champion Hurdle with BoyleSports. Constitution Hill has been cut to 1-3 off the back of this, and Honeysuckle pushed out to 7-1. From your point of view, Barry, sorry, just a secondary question on this. If you're being deadly honest, with you being so Constitution Hill for all the reasons we've followed on this show over the last year or so, when his main rival essentially gets beaten, from a sporting point of view, I was desperate for her to win so that we could really gear up for this clash between Constitution Hill and Honeysuckle. But from your point of view, being so in Constitution Hill's camp, is there a part of you that's like, oh yes, this is great, this is going to be a home kick now for Constitution Hill, if you're being deadly honest with us?
No, I wanted to see her win, I really did, and I was hoping for the clash in Cheltenham. But she did run a good race. And she ran to probably the same level as she has done in that race last year, and was above the level she ran to in that race 2 years ago. So I think she is a better mare in the spring, she's a better mare on better ground, and she'd be better in Cheltenham than those two, I believe. Okay,
Tony, do you take a positive? Well, are you taking some positives like Barry has just carved out there in regards to Honeysuckle, or was this a big all-over negative for you for Honeysuckle?
It's a bit like Shishkin, who will come to later. It's based on what they've done previously, and what they've done previously will always be a big part of the betting market going forward. So I'd find it hard to take positives with her. I thought she had no excuses here at all. the sectionals compared to the other hurdle races on the card. Don't say that she was in front too soon. I know she pressed on sooner than the two that beat her, but she thrived on those tactics before. Would often be sent on early and put the race to bed quickly, and the others just be chasing her. So no, hard to take positives from it, especially in the type of race that she's going to be in the next while. She's been absolutely brilliant. But I think last season she wasn't as good as the previous season, and looks if she's taken another little dip here. You'd have to give an awful lot of credit to the winner here, though, who is a serious horse on soft or heavy ground. I think that's now 5 from 5 on soft or heavy when running in Ireland. Gordon Elliott did the right thing, I think, by taking him out of the Morgiana when the ground was too quick. They know by this point he just doesn't act on that, or especially not at 2 miles. He's not going to be able to be quick enough to be competitive on it. It was a promising run for him. Where he's going to go next, I don't know, because he's not in the 3 mile race at Leopardstown at Christmas. When I checked the entries, maybe he can go back to 2 miles, be very ground dependent though again. Maybe a supplementary for the 3 mile would be interesting. Classical Dream is the horse that's going to be going for that now. I would be against him now on the back of this run for Leopardstown at Christmas. He has kind of shown an ability to go very well fresh. Gian Mangan was on the television saying that he was pretty straight for this. He struggled last year. He got beaten at a very short price in Goran when he backed up quickly after Christmas last year. So if he was to pitch up at Leopardstown at Christmas, which I presume he will, he's one I'd like to be taken on. Echoes and Rain was one that ran a kind of an interesting race there. She wouldn't have looked anywhere near up to this grade last season, but when they took the whole headgear off her, I think that done a little bit of tricking about with her bits and her kind of equipment and that. She was a much better horse, really improved on the flat through the summer there. Now, she is a very tricky customer. She's raced with a choke out there for 3/4 of the race. But Paddy Mullins was still actually on the bridle when she fell 2 out. Now, I suspect he was holding on to nothing because of how she'd raced, but I do think there's a bigger performance in her somewhere now that they've kind of figured out the right headgear and that. And don't ask me where it is, it might be back at 2 miles, but there's something there anyway, and I think she has improved a little bit.
Okay, something to cling on to. I'm being told by my producer that Tupu is a 20 to 1 shot for the champion hurdle with BoyleSports, not a 50 to 1 shot, because that would be very generous by our sponsors indeed. But let's move on to the Tingle Creek, Tony. Let's stick with you. You mentioned Shishkin already. What were your takeaways from this? Edwardstone, I think he was incredibly impressive, and I'm putting him right up there with Energumene now in the champion chase division, because in my view, Grenadine was that was his Gold Cup and he ran well, but Edwardstone breezed past him in fine fashion. But Shishkin, the big mystery in the race?
I thought this was a pretty clean, well-run race, and definitely no hard luck stories and things like that. The times were broadly similar as I timed them from the first fence to the line, but the Tingle Creek was way slower from the pond fence, 2.8 seconds slower. That would reflect quite well on Jonbon, to be fair, because he wasn't really asked for any effort after the last, so the credit to him on that score. But you'd have to be impressed with Edwardstone. He wouldn't have been a horse that I would have thought was a real champion chase horse start this season. He was a little bit older, novice last term, and he'd spent a bit longer over hurdles, and he was an 8-year-old, but this was excellent. And I think it just proved that his entry form wasn't through at all. He had a very busy season last season, where he fell first, then he went to Warwick, Sandown, Kempen, back to Warwick, back to Cheltenham. It was just a bridge too far, and this is what he's capable of. Jumped well, just did everything right. And as you said, Grenadine, is Grenadine a champion chase horse? Probably not, but he's definitely a grade 1 horse around Sandown. He was possibly a little bit closer to the pace than ideal, but Edwardstone, I think, would have beaten him regardless. With Shishkin, again, it's a bit like Honeysuckle. His past reputation and his past achievements, which are huge, are always going to be in the market, at least for the rest of the season, you would imagine. He has this bone condition. He was carrying his head a bit off to the side there, coming to the pond fence where he made that mistake. At that point, he was kind of struggling to hang in with them. Look, I find when I'm betting, I back enough horses that have physical problems, that I find out the physical problems kind of after the race or when I'm watching it. I really don't want to be backing a horse that I know has got a physical problem going into the race. I think Nicky, no, it's just you're asking for trouble. And Nicky Henderson may well be able to get another race or two out of him. I don't have any doubt about that. And maybe it will be up and trip, because at Ascot last year, he needed all of it to beat an Ergamine. And even as a younger horse, the afterburners do kick on late. But I just, with his reputation and with that sort of well documented sort of issues and the way he's holding himself, I've just been inclined to take him on for the moment.
Barry, would you agree with said reservations in regards to Shishkin at this stage now, off the back of the Tingle Creek run?
Well, you would have slight reservations. He ran well to a point, but he was on the back foot. You could see that. But that has been his style last season as well. He took all of Ascot, as Tony said, to get past an Ergamine. So you generally get slower with age, not faster. So he has stepped back a little bit in that department. But that doesn't mean he won't stay well. So whether he steps up to be a Ryanair horse, he'd add a little bit of interest to that race. And it was even mentioned he's more likely to be seen in a Gold Cup than a Champion Chase. So whether they go the full distance and for a Gold Cup, I can't say. But he's got options, but it's going to be over further. As regards the winner, though, you'd have to be really impressed. As a novice last year, he was a good, solid novice. Did I see him step up to that level? I didn't know. And he beat Grenadine 9 lengths. Shishkin beat Grenadine 10 lengths in the Desert Orchid in Kempton last Christmas. So it's a good yardstick. But it was definitely a step up in what he did last year. And he is a contender. But to say that he is an Ergamine covered, I wouldn't go that far. I think an Ergamine wasn't as good as he could have been maybe at Cheltenham, and I thought he was better in Punchestown than he was in Cheltenham.
Okay, well, Edwardstone 3-1 for the Champion Chase with BoyleSports, and Shishkin has been brought in at 6-1 for the Ryanair with BoyleSports. Barry, what about Jonbon? It seemed to scare away plenty of his rivals, but could only beat what was there and did it in pretty decent fashion. What did you make of his jumping on the day around Sandown?
Yeah, it was a really good performance. Jumped really well. He was so nimble, neat. And Sandown is a tricky course. You know, there's a lot of fences coming at you quick, especially over 2 miles. But he was very measured and very accurate. And he landed. He was only on the ground and he was gone. He was rapid away from his fences. So it was a really good performance. Boot Hill is a decent horse, and he chased him into the straight. And for a second, it looked like he was going to get him under pressure. It took a stride or two for Jonbon for the afterburners to kick in, but he pulled away and won comfortably. So no, it was a really good performance. You'd have to be really happy with him. And you know, he stays well and has pace, lots of class, so no, lots to like.
And the stars out in force on Saturday, all across the UK, and so we're going to bounce up to Aintree, where we got to see the Grand National winner, Tony and Noble Yeats, in the Many Clouds Chase, and all of a sudden we're talking about this horse going from winning a Grand National last season to now being a 12-1 shot with BoyleSports for the Gold Cup off the back of winning the Many Clouds. Did you expect that sort of performance from him in a Many Clouds?
No, because it'd kind of be at the thin end of his stamina, and you know, the bare form of that run wouldn't be anything to get excited about. But he just looks like a horse that when stamina's brought into play a bit further, he'll thrive. The way he picked up between the second last and the last was highly impressive, and there are reasons why he will keep improving. His jumping last season as a novice was terribly up and down, and more down, to be honest. But it seems to have gotten sharper at Wexford and at Aintree here at the last day. You know, I think there was one mistake, but bar that, he was pretty good. And also the fact that he combined a bumper and a hurdle season together. He was sent very, very quickly over fences, so he does have more scope to improve. You know, that he is that kind of young horse. And he also achieved probably the impossible last season, winning the Grand National as a novice. I know it's not the Grand National of old, but he still got the job done. No, that's a very likeable performance with a view to come back into those open Grade 1 chases. He's something a little bit different and all that type of stuff. Look, with Emmett Mullins, like the rules kind of go out the window a bit in terms of campaigning and stuff like that. You know, they do kind of stuff that would appear very queer on the outside, but it's successful. You know, they do mix things up, and you know, it was quite enjoyable. Brian Gleeson was interviewing him after the Maryland Giant won the big handicap hurdle at Fairyhouse today, and Brian Gleeson, I think he used the metaphor of a jigsaw, and Emmett just replied to him, yes, it is a big jigsaw. I think sometimes Emmett and Paul Bourne and the boys are playing with a 3D jigsaw, and the rest of us are playing with flat pieces. But anyway, Noble Yeats, I think he's a horse that can keep going. I definitely wouldn't be ruling him out of winning an open Grade 1, especially if you get a bit of soft ground and there's real good pace on it at 3 miles or even the Gold Cup trip.
You wouldn't have any interest in him in a King George, though, would you?
Might be a little bit too sharp for him, and it's also coming up quite soon. Yeah, so maybe into the spring.
Okay, what about Facile Vega as well, Tony? We've been waiting to see him over hurdles for last few weeks anyway, and he made his hurdles debut, did it in emphatic form. Everyone sort of reaching for the plaudits, going wild about the champion bump hero from last season, just coming out and basically showing that he can jump a hurdle, which I don't think was ever really in doubt. But everyone seems to have gone into overdrive about this performance. Were you on that page?
No, I wasn't just as impressed as all that. Look, he was a brilliant bumper horse, won all the Spring Festival bumpers on contrasting grounds and visually excellent, but I wouldn't get too excited about this. You know, how many of them were trying, shall we say? How many of them wanted to lay up with him early in the race? Not too many. That's understandable. You know, that horses don't want to be ruining the handicap mark and so on. I think the times of the race weren't particularly good relative to the other the winner of the other division, Paul Nolan's horse Joy O'Mashan. Overall, Nolan's horse was faster and he was the same from 3 out. So it looks as if Facile Vega has really picked up from 3 out and cleared away from the rest. I think that's a little bit deceiving. It might say more about the ones in behind. But look, we know that Facile Vega can run fast. He's done it before. He just hasn't done it on Saturday here. One little thing I would worry about him, or two little things I would worry about him, he was very free for the first half of the race. I wonder how they're going to adapt tactics when he goes into a better race. Are they going to sit in, or are they going to actually try to make it? And also, he went to take a jink at the Tour last, which you wouldn't really like to see. You'd like to see him keeping kind of straight. Willie Mullins' horses sometimes first him out over obstacles can do things like that, can do little things that are a little bit queer. Like that horse in the beginner's chase on Saturday as well, jumping awfully out to his left, I Am Maximus. But that's Facile Vega. I would give a little bit of praise though to Joy O'Mashan. He was second to him in the bumper at Leopardstown at Christmas last year. Paul Nolan has been going through a kind of a bad time. I think this was just a second winner since Irish Derby weekend. He's the winner of a big handicap there. But Joy O'Mashan was impressive here. He didn't hurdle particularly well, but I thought he showed a really good turn of foot from the turn in when he picked up Viva De Vito, despite making mistakes at the last two. Look, I don't think he's going to be a grade one horse right close to it, but at his own level, he's one that can definitely win races, and I think he likes the bit of nice ground rather than the slower stuff. Okay,
positive stance on him then. Let's move on to a bit more of the graded action from Fairyhouse today and start with the juveniles, Barry. Lossiemouth won the grade 3 there. Pretty impressive on debut for the Mullins yard, and now 4-1 for the Triumph hurdle division, as you would expect with the juveniles taking a bit slow, sort of hasn't quite developed yet. I'm not sure we've seen some real stars, but 4-1 off the back of today's victory. What was the word on the street when you were there today about Lossiemouth?
It was definitely an impressive performance. Jumped brilliantly over the last two, really professional, pulled away nicely, won with a bit in hand. But 4-1 on the Triumph is probably skinny enough at this stage. You'd want to see a bit more, and you'd want to know what the opposition is going to be. So I wouldn't be rushing into that. But as a performance, you'd like what you saw.
Tony, in the Royal Bond, Marine Nationale won for the Barry O'Connell team. Michael O'Sullivan on board. Michael O'Sullivan, I can put my hands up in the air and say I'd never even really heard of coming into today, and now he's won a grade 1. And the favourite, not even in the placings, with Marine Nationale beating Irish Point and Ashrow Diamond filling in third. Bit of a turn up for the books in the Royal Bond. Anything that you were surprised by in particular here?
I think the most pertinent point about the race was the pace they went in the first 3 quarters of it. It definitely paid to sit off it. They went very hard. The first 3 home were the last 3 going down the back straight. Marine Nationale at one point he kind of ran into the back of Hercule de Soy, knocked them back, which probably actually suited with the way the race was being run. Champ Kiley, the favourite, he raced closer to the pace than most and was very, very keen. And I suppose you could mark him up on that, but I didn't really like his way of going. He'd need to settle a bit better. He's had a bit of experience now not to be doing that. The winner did it well because the ground would not have been an ideal pair as trainer beforehand, and he made that mistake. The last did very well to pick up from there. Look, massive praise going to Barry Connell here. He went the route of, using the big name trainers and all that over the years and had plenty of winners, but then kind of went out on his own. I'm sure people were saying he was absolutely mad. He was always getting a few winners, but now he seems to kicked on and got another grade of horse, and this lad look very good going into the future now. And you know, I think some of the connections suggested that up to now that they thought he might have been a bridle horse because he'd never really had to come off it, and you know, he came off it well here and found plenty. Also the Gordon Elliott horse in second ran a really good race. Of the front three, he probably pressed on soon enough. Having watched his maiden hurdle in Cork, and he was coming from the French bumper races where he'd won over 12 furlongs, and the fact that he went to Cork for his maiden hurdle would suggest he's quite fast, but he actually showed plenty of stamina here because he kept finding and kept that well. He'd be open to more progress. Look, the suspicion is the Royal Bond. Sometimes it's not the greatest of the Irish Grade 1 novice hurdles. I presume they're going to be going against Facile Vega in the next while, perhaps at Christmas. We'll see where it stacks up. But it was a thrilling race, and fair play to Connections, a great winner for them.
Yeah, thrilling finish indeed. If not the finish that many people were thinking of with Champ Kylie not there. Barry, Mighty Potter, I was of the graded races at Fairyhouse there. I think this was the performance I was most taken with, thrown into a grade 1 and just his second chase start. And I know they've always thought a lot of him, but I just thought he's really putting it all together now. He's got fences. I know he wasn't perfect. He's still a work in progress, but I was so taken with him. Please, can you back those thoughts up? Don't dampen my enthusiasm for this horse.
No, definitely not. I'd be with you there on that all the way, Vanessa. But I think that's part of the beauty of him, that he is nowhere near the finished product. He showed that in Down Ryle. He was still very green and backward and innocent. He's a big horse. He beat Three Stripe Life in a grade 1 last year over 2 miles, so he has enough pace. But physically, he's maturing into himself to hold him. So the improvement he was going to show from last season to this season, there was massive chance for a big improvement, and you saw that in the finish today. So it was a brilliant performance. He nodded at the back of the fourth last. He stumbled and nearly fell at the back of the third last, but that was completely out of a lack of concentration because he was on his own. When you see him make that second mistake at the third last, he pricks his ears 3 strides later and he gallops into the home turn with his ears pricked. Gallard Desmesnil then comes alongside him. Jack is happy to wait for the company. He was foot perfect at the second last, the same at the last, and he pulled away for a comfortable success. Again, a horse who was only about 6 or 7 lengths behind Lahon Press last season at Cheltenham. So it was a good standard for the race, but a really good performance, and I'd say a horse with a big future.
Davey pulling up on Three Stripe Life. I thought that he just couldn't get his stirrup back, but actually the saddle had slipped. Is that right? Would you have sorted that situation out and carried on riding in the race, Barry, back in the day?
Oh, definitely, Vanessa. In a flash, I'd have all that sorted and gone. No, Davey, the saddle had moved, so he had no option. Lucky to survive the mistake, but was completely out of position as well. So if he did manage to get himself back on board with how he'd like to have been, his chance was probably gone, especially in that level of company. You're not going to make mistakes like that and win a race like that.
Tony, quick line on the Drimhall from you. A, were you taken with the winner, and B, what to take out of the race from in behind, if anything, away from the winner?
I would agree with a lot of what Barry says about his performance and his kind of greenness and all that, though I would place a question mark beside the form a little bit. It's very possible he's after beating a 3 mile plus horse that wasn't fit, with a horse that didn't handle the ground in third, and the favourite pulled up. So bare form, I think, is a little bit questionable. Just listening to the paddock people on TV, Gaillard de Menil needed it. His 2 previous seasons he got beaten on his first start of the season. I expect him to take a step forward from that. I think that the Devil's Coachman is just a horse that need to get him back over hurdles. Again, I've said this before, he just doesn't jump well enough to compete in these chases, and he actually could be quite a decent hurdler if they drop them back over intermediate trips, maybe even over staying trips. I thought Adamantly Chosen didn't run too bad. I think he finished 5th in the end. They changed tactics on him, dropped him in, don't think it's suited at all. He made a couple of mistakes early, but then he made a massive move kind of from 3 out. I thought it was a little bit premature with the way the race had been run. Got there 2 out, coming to the stand side, and just flattened out, and wouldn't really like that ground either. I think there might be a bigger performance back in him if they could maybe make the run and back on a sounder surface. Might not be the spring. I suppose the race is probably made from is a way off. It's the novice handicap chase at Punchestown, but there just looked like there was more to give with him if conditions were different.
Okay. Mighty Potter now 4-1 with BoyleSports for the Turners Novices Chase at the festival off the back of that. And as we've said, fingers crossed, there's still plenty more to come from Mighty Potter this season. Barry, quick mention for the Beecher Chase, the Ashtown lad winning another big Saturday prize for the Skeltons. Do you ever celebrate like that over the line? Did you see that shot of Harry Skelton? Do you ever do that over the line?
No.
What's the worst celebration you've ever... What's the worst or best, whichever way you look at it, like the most erratic celebration you ever did over the line?
Spirit Leader winning the County Hurl in 2003. I was probably about, 20 yards, 30 yards from the line, and I stood up to salute the crowd. And just as I passed the line, I looked to my left hand side, and Ballapur was a neck down on me, and I'm going, oh jeez, I never saw you.
Yeah, I didn't. I wish you'd have celebrated a little bit earlier, because I was on Ballapur that day, and it was an Op Monaghan job with Oliver Brady training it. It was an awful pity you didn't do it a wee bit before. I'd have a brilliant finish to that race, actually.
I would have been tortured. I'd have been tortured forever for that. That was my Mikel Barcelona moment, anyway.
Oh, good. I'll go back and have a look at that. Right, BoyleSports Beach Chase, Ashtown lad wins and Gez Keel back in second. Barry, what were your takeaways from this race? Is Ashtown lad a national horse?
You'd have to think so. Good performance, jumped well. Harry kept him wide for whatever reason, but a good solid performance. He stayed well. I thought Gashgill was coming to win, and he pulled out more the winner, and it was, as I say, a good solid performance. And the national is more emphasis on stamina these days, with the moderations to the fences. But I was really impressed with Gashgill as a 6-year-old, second down the mix in the Sefton last time, only beat the neck. As I said, thought was going to win it this time, but didn't. But as a 6-year-old, is still open to improvement, has some great experience around there now, and looks as if he stays well. So I would be more interested maybe in the runner-up, because there's a potential for improvement between now and the national. Okay.
Barry very keen on the runner-up in the BoyleSports Beach Chase from the weekend. And final word, Barry, is going to go to you because strong leader for the Ollie Murphy team is now a 25-1 shot for the Supreme Novices Hurdle with BoyleSports off the back of winning at Aintree at the weekend. And just the performance you did want to highlight from the weekend might have been missed by some, given that there was so much to focus on.
Yeah, and he's a horse I liked. He won a bumper last season, and Warwick was really impressive. He was second to Canto Bruno in Cheltenham last month. When it was a slowly run race, he came from way off the pace, and the winner was sat handy. He was beaten 4 lengths. I think he's unlucky not to be 4 from 4 rather than 3 from 4. He was impressive last time he won, and it was a good performance the weekend. I'd imagine more a Ballymore type, I would have thought, than a Supreme, but definitely a horse with potential.
Okay. Good to note going forward. Barry, we'll stick with you for performance of the weekend, please. Who is that going to this week?
I'd give it to Jonbon. I just loved how he jumped and how he went to the line. I thought it was a really good performance. So if you're looking for potential, I thought Jonbon.
Okay, interesting. Didn't think you were going to go there, but all right. Tony, what about you? Performance of the week, please.
I'm going to go Gordon Elliott. I think he won basically half the races at Fairyhouse there. I know it wasn't Willie Mullins' absolute A team, but he certainly has a few good young horses there that you'd think could compete with Mullins' Bata One, Stupu, and the winner of the Drinmore, along with that bumper horse who's Mighty Potter. Just slipped my mind there for a moment. The winner of the bumper on Sunday shaped up quite well. So yeah, I think Gordon Elliott is he said that he's changed things up a little bit this year. Didn't want them just as ready maybe on the first start back, but to improve afterwards, and hopefully they said that they weren't going to be running on empty in the last month of the season. So seems to have gone to plan so far. Be interesting to see are they going to carry it through.
Okay, those were the boys' performances and reflections of the weekend just gone. But now we can hear from BoyleSports' own Leon Blanche to see what they made of the weekend's action.
Well, what an eventful weekend we had of National Hunt racing. I'm going to start off on Saturday and look at Sandown, where Tingle Creek winner Edwardstone was mightily impressive indeed. He showed a lot of turn of pace from the last fence to the finish line, and subsequently the Alan King trained runner is now a 3-1 chance, second favourite behind Energamine, who is the current 6-4 favourite to win the champion chase at the Cheltenham Festival in March. Noble Yeats, how impressive was he winning the BoyleSports Many Clouds at Aintree? Could he be a dark horse for the Gold Cup? We're all hoping in anticipation that he can be, and we're expecting Geraghty and Champ maybe to make his seasonal debut at Punchestown this coming Sunday in the John Durkan. Moving on to Sunday's racing, and all good things must come to an end. Honeysuckle, 16 runs, 16 wins. Unfortunately, the superstar mare couldn't make it 17 out of 17. She ran a cracking race. Maybe the rain softened ground just didn't help her chances. She finished third behind Classical Dream and of course the winner T Hapu on a brilliant day for Gordon Elliott. Honeysuckle's out to 7-1. Constitution Hill is a 3-1 on favourite, and he didn't even have to leave his box. And second favourite is Stateman, who is now available at 11-2. The other horse I was very impressed with on Sunday was Lossiemouth. This new French recruit for Willie Mullins and Rich Ritchie, 3-1 to win on Sunday, is now 3-1 to win the Triumph Hurdle. She could be very special indeed.
Now, as we're recording this on Sunday night, due to the fact that we're all on the gravy train on Monday, actually that's a lie, I am, I don't know if the boys are at all, but as a result we're recording it on Sunday night, and so that means that we are very low on entries or what we think might run at the weekend, but we do have the John Durkan to look forward to. It's probably not going to be as an informative weekend as the weekend has been, but if Geraghty and Champ makes his seasonal debut, then that'll be something to get excited about, won't it, Barry?
Oh, definitely. But Willie holds the keys to it again. And as we saw from the Morgiano Hurdle a couple of weeks ago, you couldn't just predict what Willie might do when it comes to declaration time. But looking at the horses that are there, you have to look at what are their options for Christmas. So the one I think possibly, if an Ergamine was to run at Leopardstown at Christmas, maybe Fernie Hollow needs to run here. Or if Geraghty and Champ was to run here, you're not going to run here and run at Christmas, I wouldn't think. So maybe Geraghty and Champ, you'd love to see him, or Fernie Hollow, but they'd be the two that you'd be, I'm sure they're top of the list anyway. You won't see the two of them, I can't imagine, but it'll be interesting whatever he lines up.
Anything from you, Tony, just to flag up at this early stage from the weekend, or are we just not going there, given that we have very little idea of what's actually going to run in what races?
No, similar to what Barry's saying there, the Cork race is on next week as well, the Hilly Way. So how is Willie Mullins going to split an Ergamine, Fernie Hollow? Chacan Bourgeois has an entry in the John Durkan as well. He hasn't mentioned him going up and trip, but yeah, we're guessing a little bit, and it is getting a little bit tight to Christmas. So is it going to be a case that maybe an Ergamine will go to Cork, Fernie Hollow's going to wait to Leopardstown? Yeah, we'll know a lot more on Tuesday.
We will indeed. There's also the International Hurdle at Cheltenham, a 2-day meeting at Cheltenham this weekend as well to look forward to. So come next week, we will have plenty to discuss on the show. But for now, that is about it. But viewers, please do check out the offers from BoyleSports. They are on the screen right now. There's plenty for you guys to get stuck into. Our sponsors have been very generous indeed. So please do head over to the BoyleSports website and make use of said offers. They are not to be missed. But that is about it. Thank you very much to the boys as always, and thank you to you guys for watching. And you know the drill by now. Hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, like us on Twitter, give us a retweet, give us your feedback, anything you want to let us know about. Please do get in contact with any of us or all of us. But for now, have a good week. That was Off the Fence.